We are recording it, so on Monarch's website for later viewing. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so today we're going to talk through, who to count in the point in time count, what the sheltered and unsheltered count procedures are, general survey guidelines, how to do motivational interviewing, tips for conducting respondent interviews, survey questions, inputting data, completing the survey questions online, how HIMA's data will be collected, as well as then just any questions and contact information. In general, you can always find some more information by going to the Monarch website under New Jersey Counts. Okay, so on the website we have a quick reference guide. If you go to website at the top under resources, there is a special New Jersey Counts page. That page will have all of the materials that I'll be going over with you today. And if you're on this training, you will be receiving an email later on with the materials. So one of the things that is on the Monarch's website is the user guide. This is a helpful 3-page guide. So if you can't, when you are doing a survey and you can't you know, remember something of how to do something on the survey. This is kind of that like you can go back to and help you when you're inputting. Okay, so this is what the reference guide looks like. Like I was saying, it's a 3-page guide. It's on the website. And it just really goes through pretty briefly, all the different definitions and abbreviations you might need when you're filling out the survey. Like I said, it's just really something that's good to have with you when you're going out for the count itself and during that week of surveying. So some from further information, on HUD guidance, like I said, we'll be sending out this information, but you can go to either of these, pages on the HUD websites to get some more resources. Okay, so what is the point in time count? It's a count of anyone experiencing homelessness in a given area on a single night. Um, this happens in the same night throughout all of New Jersey. The count is supposed to be a statistically reliable, unduplicated, inclusive count of both sheltered and unsheltered folks, and it should be conducted during the last week of January. The timing of the point in time is mandated by HUD, and this is done nationwide. The goal is to help identify and collect information about individuals and families in any community that are experiencing homelessness. The PID helps us to capture that critical data in a community that helps us adjust the homeless service delivery system, and then it helps us also understand the demographics of households that are experiencing homelessness, including groups such as veterans, children and youth, people who are experiencing chronic homelessness. It also then helps the community when we're applying for any federal, state, and local grants. The better we do of the count, the better we do to help those, to get the assistance to those who are experiencing homelessness. So, why do a point in time count? In general, we need to have a sense of what is going on with the population and if homelessness is going up or going down. The count helps with Code Blue planning, ESG reporting, as well as the COC reporting. Additionally, the point in time count helps to provide information on the characteristics of those who are experiencing homelessness, both locally and then trends over time. It additionally also helps us to advocate for private and local government funds and creates a sense of responsibility within the stakeholders. So, who to count in the point in time count? HUD only reports on who is homeless, and that is defined as for both unsheltered and sheltered. But communities can collect some more information if they wanted to. For sheltered homelessness, that includes a person who is in a hotel or motel that's paid by agencies, in transitional housing, or an emergency shelter. I see a hand. Oh, is it still raised? I saw a hand for a second. Okay. Never mind then. Okay. But yeah, if you guys have questions at all throughout, please, feel free to raise your hand or put it in the Q&A, and I'll try to get to them as we can. Okay, so then it's important to make these distinctions because it does impact the methodology. So you do want to check if you are in a community that is counting someone who's at risk. Likely that's not the case. We're really just counting if someone is unsheltered, so someone who's sleeping in a space that's designated, not as a regular sleeping accommodation, such as a car, a park, abandoned building, and sheltered is, a safe haven, transitional housing, emergency shelter, things like that. Um, let's see. People are counted as sheltered for the purpose of the count are those individuals or households that are residing, like I said, in emergency shelters or transitional housing or any institution such as a hospital, detox, or jail. You're counted as unsheltered if you or your household are staying outdoors. You're in the woods in any capacity or on the streets, in an abandoned building, if you're living in a vehicle. Really any place that lacks the amenities such as drinking water, restrooms, ability to cook hot food, or ability to bathe. Persons that, oh, I see it. Andrea, you have your hand raised. I'm gonna let you should be able to talk. Andrea, do you have a question? I see your hand. Okay. You can just always put it in the chat. We can keep going. So persons that are staying with temporarily with family or friends. I see. Okay, other hands. Okay, with family or friends, they do not meet the
Hello?
def. Hi, yes.
Oh, we were trying to write in the chat and then we saw it was disabled. I mean, this question might be silly, but I just wanted to ask, like, what if somebody became homeless and didn't have a place, but they stay from place to place, maybe sleeping in a room in somebody's house, but it's still not stable living. Is that still
Yeah.
considered a
Just I was just getting to actually I was just getting to that part of the my point. So yeah, so HUD, if you're like couch surfing or you're doubling up with somebody, that does not meet the definition according to HUD. It is going to be up to the community itself, like that point in time coordinator, if they want to collect this information. So I would just see whichever county you're in, talk with that PIT coordinator to see if because they might just want to collect the person's information so we can help them identify and other needs for housing and services for that community. They won't meet the definition from HUD for homelessness, but we can still be able to be assisting those folks. So just definitely talk with your individual county's PIT coordinator to see about that.
hmm,
But in
okay.
general, the count doesn't require like there's not rigorous screening. So if a person is self-identifying that they don't have housing, then that's what matters. So just put them as that. Um,
Okay. Thank
okay.
you.
Yeah, of course, no problem. Okay. Okay, so how to do the count. So anyone who's unsheltered, it's going to be through a paper survey. And for sheltered programs, it will be in HMIS. If the client is in HIMIS, we'll be updating him, you'll be updating HIMIS to reflect the night of the count. Reflect that on the night of the count. If they're not in HIMIS, then you'll be doing a paper survey only. Um, and in general, all shelter programs will be submitting a summary survey form. Um, and yeah, um, if the forms are in general are going to help us with any discrepancies and things like that and the deduplication efforts. Um, and if your shelter has not already submitted a summary form, please do. So it needs to be submitted as soon as possible. Okay, I see Amanda, you have your hand raised and I'll allow you to talk.
Hi. For sheltered families, where can we find the summary survey form?
So the summary form would be like your shelter itself would have send it out. If you need one, please just send an email to us, to Casey asking for that to fill it out. Otherwise, like the shelter, it's just going to be like already kind of done. If you're doing actual surveys themselves, you don't want to talk with your PIT coordinator to get get the paper surveys.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, no problem. And then Brenda, I see your hand. Oh, let me let you talk, actually. Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just have a question. For outreach and engagement programs, will you be looking at HIMSS at all, or is the protocol is for those type of programs to do the paper surveys?
Yes, if you're going to be doing like street outreach in any capacity, do the paper survey.
Okay. Just
Mhm.
want to confirm.
Yep, absolutely. And of course, if your agency has like tablets or something like that, you can do the Survey Monkey form. But it's like essentially still like that paper form, like survey. It's not in HIMIS.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, of course, no problem. And then Jamie, I see your hand. So let me actually hold on. Sorry. Um, sorry, I allow you to talk.
Unmute. Okay, yes, I wanted to just confirm. I'm pretty sure this is it, but like when so we're going to be doing the survey at the soup kitchen, but if someone
Mhm.
slept at the rescue mission that I know puts information in a HIMIS, then we don't have to continue with the paper survey. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And that's going to be, we're going to talk about that when anytime you're going to be asking anyone to do a survey, you want to ask them, have they already filled out a survey? Or they have already spoken with someone, things like that. There are like one of the questions we do, the survey asks for initials, so that helps us with addressing any potential like duplication. But if someone, is they know they're in a shelter that they would be then counted. But you always just want to ask whoever you're interviewing if they've already been, been surveyed. Okay. Okay. Let me continue on. Okay. So when is the point in time count? So surveys will be from Tuesday night, January 27th through Tuesday, February 4th is when we'll be doing the surveys themselves. It will always be asking where they slept on the night of Tuesday, January 27th. So even if you were to do the survey, not on the 28th or, you do it on the 29th, you're always asking where someone was staying on January 27th. In general, HUD requires the pit to be held in the last 10 days of January. It's typically planned for the last Tuesday of the month. Like I said, we're always asking for where folks were staying on January 27th this year. Um, in general, just as with the upcoming potential snowstorm, Monarch is aware of the snowstorm that's predicted from Sunday into Monday, and how that could be impacting our pit counts. Yeah, it will be starting on Tuesday night. We have reached out to HUD to discuss a potential extension for the pit count if we get the snowfall that is predicted. So overall, Monarch is aware of the process. HUD's been notified. If we receive the extension to when to do the point in time count, we'll postpone the pit by count by 1 week. The count will then be conducted on February 4th, asking where folks stayed on Tuesday, February 3rd. We'll be sending an update on Monday as to whether we'll be planning, proceeding a schedule, or the extension was requested. If you do have any questions about this, I'm going to put the email in the chat for Casey Vankowski at Monarch. She'll be able to kind of better kind of field those. But in general, your point in time count coordinators for Interior County will also be providing, any updates on things like that. But just wanted to at least let you know that we, obviously are aware of the, pretty significant snowstorm that's, happening, and yeah, keeping an eye on it. Jamie, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted I'm sorry. So at what point would that call be made? Like, do you know like the latest at
Monday.
which Monday? Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay. Um, oh, Daniel, I see your hand. Hold on. Hi, Daniel, you should be able to talk now. Here's your question. Daniel, do you have a question? Okay, so this is what the paper survey itself looks like. This is the front of the survey. Any questions that are highlighted in gray, those are the HUD mandated questions. Those are the questions that must receive responses. In general, obviously, all the questions are important, but these are the ones that are required by HUD and that we really need to have answers for. on the survey as well. You can kind of see right at the top on the right-hand side, there's a question that asks, have you already participated in the 2026 PIT survey? This is kind of where your chance to, if you know folks that, are staying in a shelter or might, may have already been surveyed. In general, I always ask this question just because that helps, if they've already been surveyed, you don't need to, have them go through it again. So this is what the front looks like, and then this is what the back looks like. And again, the questions in gray are those HUD mandated questions. Okay, so some general survey guidelines. We want only one survey per household. A household is defined as any group of persons that would be housed together if they were able to obtain permanent housing. You want to always ask again if the person has participated in the survey already. This can help us with the deduplication. In general, don't make up an answer for anything. You want to choose from the list of choices. Oh, Stephanie, I see your hand raised. Do you have a question? Okay. You can also just put your questions in the Q&A and I'll get to those as well as we go. Okay. Yeah, don't make up any, answer any questions, choose from the list of choices. For some of the questions, it might be able to be completed via observation. Question number 6 is one of those questions. If no response is given to an answer, leave it blank. Except for question 10, where it asks about the relationship to head of household, age, and and so on. That we want to potentially guess. But respondent may guess, if you're unsure about other household members. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to scroll down too far. In general, age and gender, age is extremely important to collect since these are HUD requirements. But if you, for anyone you don't see, do not guess. Okay. Oh, I see some hands. Shinrikas? Do you have a question? Okay. Gonna so where were we? Okay. So some more general survey guidelines. If you are a veteran program, you want to make sure you're labeling all clients as veterans. For those who served in the armed forces, your domestic violence program, make sure you're labeling all clients as fleeing domestic violence. If your program is an HMIS, paper surveys from your program will not be counted unless it identifies that clients were staying in a location other than your program location. And then in general, during the deduplication, an agency conducted paper survey will be used over a duplicate from another account location, and HIMSS records will be used over duplicate surveys. HIMSS information needs to be accurate. So if you, oh, I keep scrolling, sorry. If you are a HIMSS entering agency, a shelter, things like that, you want to make sure you have that, those accurate records. Diane, let me allow you to talk. Diana, do you have a question?
I do. Hey, I actually had to run out for a few minutes, but I do have a question. Will we be receiving a copy of this?
Yes, we will be. This whole training is being recorded, so we'll be on the website, and then we'll also be sending out these materials.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay. And then I'm just going through the. Yes. Sorry. Now I'm just seeing some of the questions. The point in time count is going to be asking where folks are staying on January 27th. Mostly people will be asking from the 28th through the following week. Can folks hear me overall? I know that someone said that they can't hear me. So hopefully you guys all can hear me, so I apologize for that. Surveys will be sent out to the county PIT coordinators. Someone asked if where surveys will be done. That will be you gotta talk with your specific county regarding where you'll be going out. Since each county coordinator does have, that is specifically, decided, if certain locations, things like that, those programs. Okay, Brandon saying not allowed to speak or the settings are disabled. If you raise your hand, you should be able to then I can let you speak. Um, and then yes, if the offices are closed on Monday, an email will be sent. Yeah, we'll be definitely getting lots of information out there. Okay, Jared, you have a question?
Yes. My question is, we are a HIMSS centering agency, so will we still use the paper survey? I mean, we don't have anyone staying at our facility per se, so will we use the paper survey or how would that work?
So, um, so it's more like this is for if like you're in a shelter and like you that type of him is entering. Like if you're just in general a him is entering like agency, you would be doing then paper surveys or the SurveyMonkey surveys. Because no one stays at your individual facility, you know, like your like agency. Um, yeah, the
Okay.
HIMSS is purely just for like if you are a shelter and you have, you know, clients staying and we know, okay, like, hi, you know, Jane Doe is here this night. They're you know, experiencing homelessness. They'll count for the point in time, you know, for the point in time. But if you're going to be assisting, you know, in, you know, at a Project Homeless Connect event or things like that, then you'd be doing, you know, those surveys that way. Does
Okay, thank you.
that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank
Okay,
you.
got it. Yeah, no problem. Okay. 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 Okay, so for any HIMSS participating programs that are entering multiple services into the same program in HMIS, they will not be able to have their HIMSS information pulled for the PIT. So let's say a program has both hotel motel stays and they also pay for prevention services. The clients that are in for the hotel motel clients, those clients would count as homeless, but the prevention clients would not be counting as homeless. So they would not be able to use that, you know, that prevention client program when we're pulling from HIMSS. Those would be the programs that have to do paper surveys. So, okay. So now getting into motivational interviewing. So this is a collaborative conversation style that helps strengthen a person's own motivation and commitment, you know, to do the survey, and it's done with a non-judgmental attitude. It's a person-centered approach. It's a more of a guided conversation, and it, you know, supports, you know, on the individual you're interviewing's terms for the survey. It is looking at people, not as numbers, looking at and seeing that humanity, that person that you're speaking with. Um, Remembering that it's the when you're interviewing the person doing the survey, it's not about you, it's about the person you're speaking with. You want to make sure that you're being approachable and not judgmental, you know, keeping that compassionate energy, while not being afraid, you know, speaking with the person. You want to reach out to your community's PIT coordinator to find a different way to interview, to volunteer if, you know, you're not comfortable necessarily speaking with folks. It's not an intake, it's a connection. It's kind of that conversation. Obviously, we're getting that information, but it's more of that kind of that connection. Overall, people are the experts of their lives. You know, you want to use those first couple questions to make that connection and have, you know, start that conversation going. Overall, the interviewee should be speaking more than the interviewer. And something such as simple as like clothing can change the whole dynamic to how people talk to you. So making sure that, you know, if you're going to be outside, you're wearing clothes that you're, you know, are outside, not necessarily wearing something more polished. You're wearing, you know, obviously, you know, you want to always be, you know, comfortable, things like that. So another tip to help in motivational interviewing is remembering OARS, which stands for O stands for open-ended questions. You want to give space for the client to discuss what is on their mind, you know, versus that you're guiding the conversation based on what's on your mind. Your A for affirmations, so statements of support and positive feedback to build self-confidence and sense of worth and ability. R is for reflections, so statements demonstrating understanding of what clients feel and think as a way of showing empathy and understanding of the client's perspective. Summaries is S, and that's a reflection of the multiple client statements that can help guide the client through a reflection. Okay. So what to expect during the interview? It's normal for, you know, to be apprehensive when going to places where people are living. You know, you're going into someone's space. May not be sure how people are going to respond. Many people are willing to share their story and want to be heard. Some folks may not be willing to speak with you, and you need to be respectful of that for the most part. But overall, people, that you're approaching will, if you approach them with respect and dignity, they will respond positively and want to help out with the survey. Overall, you want to, when you're doing motivational interviewing, this technique is really, you want to follow their cues. If they willingly offer to provide all the information you ask, take it. Just get all, the information you can. You want to listen, respectfully and let them know that you're hearing what they're saying. Sometimes a respondent might only be willing or able to provide some of the information that we're asking, accept what you can. If they're unwilling to share, there are still sometimes a few pieces of information we can collect, and you may also be able to use what those that to kind of help build and get further questions for the survey. And then sometimes when you just kind of start building some conversation, you can then circle back to some of those questions that maybe not got an answer at first, but now as you're talking some more, you'll be like, oh, wait, and then kind of, circle back to those questions. Overall, a respondent might have some hesitancy, but when you're making it more of a conversation, it's easier to complete the survey. Overall, you want to constantly just, let folks that you're speaking with know that you're hearing what they're saying. They're sharing, their story of what, they've experienced, what they need, such as, things like that, the heartbreaking stuff that goes along with this work. And just overall, a reminder, always want to, approach everybody with courtesy and respect. Look them in the eyes, ask them for their help. You're never handing people the surveys themselves to fill out. You'll, as a volunteer, will be the one filling out this survey the whole time. But you're going to want to ask, all those questions that you can. And then, if a person, let's say they request that you could show them the survey, you can, but only you as the surveyor should fill it out itself. Okay. Just trying to check the chat. Okay, so I see a question. Some of our participants are already placed in hotels. Can we conduct these surveys via phone? Great question, Jenny. I believe so. I will have to get back to you. If you could send an email to Casey, whose email I put in the chat. I'm just not positive. I don't want to give you the wrong answer on that one. I think you probably can, because obviously you have, they're a client, you're already working with them. If there are clients that, like you're a program that does use HMIS, then essentially you won't have to do a survey with them because their information's in HIMIS. But yeah, definitely send my colleague Casey a email regarding that so we can kind of just confirm the process for that. Okay. Okay, so kind of some an example greeting dialogue when you're speaking with someone, you want to say, hi, my name's Catherine, I'm a volunteer working with our community to collect some information about people who are living without stable housing so we can do a better job at providing this housing and services. Do you have a couple minutes to talk with me while I fill out the survey? If they agree, thank them for helping out, and proceed to ask them the survey questions. You always want to ask them if they've already completed the survey with another volunteer earlier. Again, you're wanting to gather as much information as possible. If someone you're surveying does not wish to participate in the survey or does not want to answer a question, then thank the person and step away. If you can fill out the survey with the least the information you were able to gather, such as the location where you encountered the person, if their living situation, if you can estimate their age, and if you are able to get maybe the first two letters, of their name, got their name, that can all help us when we're doing the deduplication. It can help us eliminate those duplicates. Overall, you're always going to be asking folks where they stay on the night of Tuesday, January 27th. And then, you want to ask folks if, anyone in their household has been continuously without housing for a year or more, just really just kind of trying to make that survey as conversational as possible. Okay. Yeah. So some more tips for conducting interviews. always introduce yourself, ask them if they've taken the survey, let respondents know that the survey answers are anonymous. If you can, try to conduct the survey in a quiet manner because obviously people are giving, personal information. You want to be respectful of that. Um, Try not to ask compound questions, really ask one question at a time. And then, yeah, like I was saying before, using that survey questions to guide the interview. Um, if you need to clarify the information, ask those questions. If possible, always be friendly, respectful, and polite, and always thank your respondents for their time. Oh, actually, now I just found my note. So, the question I answered regarding the phone, ideally survey should be done in person and not via phone within the 7-day window. That was out in my notes for this slide. So trying to remember whose that question was. Jenny. Yeah, so if possible, don't do it in the phone. If you're already placed in hotels and they're not in Himis, you can stop by, do outreach at maybe the hotels themselves and speak with folks. And then someone asked a question, if someone does not want to fill out the survey and hasn't responded to the question 3 about where they spent the night, do we still fill out the survey with what detail as we can? Yes, yeah, you're going to want to, yeah, as much information as you can get. We'll be, Monarch will be going through all of the results and, addressing, as much as possible. Okay. Client was sheltered under Code Blue. Is that a hotel motel? Paid by an agency. Yes, for Dawn, for your question, if they're sheltered under Code Blue, if the client themselves is not paying for their accommodation, then it would be they'd be, considered homeless, and it would be, sheltered homeless, and it would be they'd fall into that category. And then, yes, we will have resources that are available to share with the people we meet. All of that. I'm actually going to be getting to that in the next slide. For any of the resources that your particular, community will have, that's where you want to speak to the point in time coordinators, since they will have those materials. They'll know, they might have little sheets of like, here's all the things that, in our county of different services, things like that. So you definitely want to, if you have questions about what resources to share, speak with your point in time coordinator. Okay, so these are some, this is a list of donation items that the statewide advisory board put together for kind of really the items that are most in need and most preferred. In general, gift cards are always the best option. If you will be when you're doing the point in time count, if you will be giving out gift cards, you want to make sure there's nothing under $10, since really meals and anything really aren't not much is not under $10 anymore. And then if there are going to be gift cards that are handed out, you want to make sure that it's for places that are local to where you are. So like, let's say for McDonald's, if there's not a McDonald's nearby, you don't want to be giving out McDonald's gift cards, maybe give out a Wendy's gift card, something like that. But yeah, overall, these are all the different items that, socks, gloves, snow boots, feet and hand warmers, large Ziploc bags, since that can help keep documents and all your personal items clean, toiletries, things like that, snacks, all of those are different items that are greatly appreciated. Okay, so now it's getting into for the survey site identifier part of the survey. So at the top of the survey, this should already be filled out for your, and your paper surveys. They will be done by the local PIT coordinators, and whoever location you're at. So the code will be 2 letters that indicate the county, and then there's 3 numbers depending on each county, and place to sort the surveys by response site. So this is more of helping on the back end when we're doing all of the collection of the surveys. Overall, you're going to enter the county where the survey is being administered, so whichever county that is. And if an agency is helping to do this, you want to put the agency name. And if the client is in a particular program, the folks you're working with are, interviewing or in a particular agency program, you're going to put that program name in there. But really, all of this you should get from the PIT coordinator if it hasn't already been populated pre-populated on the paper surveys you receive. Okay. Yeah, just as a reminder, when you're introducing yourself, you want to give a quick summary of what the point in time count is. Be transparent with folks you're talking with. We're asking for very sensitive information. Let them know why we're capturing it and that it is confidential. Always thank people for sharing, and just be, kind and patient. Okay, yeah, we kind of already gone over this. We're going to ask folks if they've already taken the survey. That's kind of the first question you're asking folks after asking if would they mind participating in this? We do have surveys available in Spanish that are available if you are able to, speak Spanish, maybe doing outreach for folks that are Spanish speaking. Speak with your point in time count coordinator to get those surveys themselves. Okay. So we're just gonna go through each of the survey questions and go from there. Okay, so one of the first questions is, would you or anyone in your household like to receive any of the following services? And then with any of these, you're going to always want to just read all the options to the person you're speaking with. There is always a check all option. You can just, select them all. So just really want to read through all of the options for any of the questions. If someone's, says something that's not listed, you're going to put other and then write whatever that was. And then this is where, if possible, we're connecting folks to those resources right away. So depending on where you're, which community you're in, you might have, some general health care already being provided, on at the Project Homeless Connect event, or nearby. You're gonna want to connect those folks with those resources, things like that. So that's where any of the before you go out, there'll be those coordinators, things like that will have those resources. This is kind of where you can connect folks to that from there. Okay, then question 2, what issues have you encountered when trying to get access to services? Again, so always check all that apply. So yeah, read through it with folks and then just, let them know that, we're always working towards removing such barriers. So if we know what certain barriers are, it helps us in trying to address the issues. Okay, so now question 3 is really where that's one of the questions in grade. Is one of the mandatory questions. So you're asking, where did you spend the night of Tuesday, January 27th? You're only checking one. So either someone is in a homeless situation, so such as on the street, abandoned building, transitional housing, hotel, motel paid for by an agency. Then there's the options for more of permanent housing or at risk. If they're in a hotel motel that they themselves are paying for, then they would be that we want to select that box, and kind of reading through the options and so on. If they're in an institution of some type, also checking off of that. As a reminder, questions in gray are those mandatory questions, and it's really those are the ones we're really trying to get answers to. For institution, if someone, let's say they're in a hospital, or if they're in a hospital, you want to ask the clarifying question of if they were admitted, if to the hospital itself. If they're just staying warm in the waiting room, then they'd be considered homeless. But if they're actually, like a patient of, admitted into the hospital, then you'd want to check off that first option under psychiatric or medical hospital facility. But if they're really just in the waiting room, then you'd put one of the homeless options. If they say they're staying in a hotel motel, you need to ask who's paying for it. Because that really does differ. If it's paid for by an agency, they're considered homeless. If they're paying for it themselves, then they're more at risk of homelessness, not considered homelessness. Jamie, I see your hand.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you just one more time? So if they are like sleeping in the emergency room of a hospital because they don't have another place to be, that would be considered code blue warming shelter. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, it would be considered, yeah, you can say on the street or like camping outside. Like they don't have
Which box
housing.
should we
Yeah.
check if they answer that question? Where do we check? Which one? Ooh, can you hear me?
I would put, yeah, I can hear you. So I was thinking, sorry, I was trying to, yeah. I would put them on the street because otherwise if they weren't in that waiting room, they'd be outside. Um,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, for the Code Blue Warming Center, only if they're physically at the warming center, should you put that for now.
I do. I mean, so if someone's like, because I'm not in, like, is it like official cold? Like, if someone says, like, I went to the church allowed me to stay inside there, like, would I mean, like, I don't know if it's
Yeah, so
official.
churches are considered emergency shelter.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then okay, I have a couple I see there are a couple questions. Uh please provide example of SH. Yeah, so for safe haven, if you're not actually a specific safe haven location, you would not be putting that. That is a yeah, that's defined service. That's correct, Susan. Um, and then Code Blue, if they are sitting up. Oh yeah, so with the Code Blue, I know last year there was the question is like if they were in a chair versus in a like a cot. Um, I believe the definition is remaining the same for that. So then you would put that they'd be, um, yeah, that remains the same definition as last year. Okay. Okay. Okay, so then question number 4, also again one of those mandatory questions. In what town did you spend the night? You're gonna want to ask, where someone stayed. Um, Really the town and county is key for Code Blue planning. Um, the location of where the survey is being conducted is not necessarily where they might be in a specific program. So you want to ask like where they physically were, for that location. If they know the town, they don't know the county, you can always just put that as long as we can get some of that information, of where they were staying that particular night. Okay, then the next question, also mandatory question. How long have you been in your current living situation? You're asking the person where they were for their most recent continuous living situation. So maybe someone has been, homeless on and off for the last 2 years. But if they lost their, housing most recently 2 weeks ago, you're going to be putting 14 days. So essentially, like where they're most like what their most recent continuous living situation. If the person is in a shelter, transitional housing program, um, their length of stay in the program can be said to correspond to the length of their current living situation. So let's say they've been at the shelter for the last month, that would be, you put that, that 1 month or 30 days or however many days. If someone's saying that they've been on and off, living on and off on the street, you can ask them when was the last time they stayed somewhere other than the street, just so you can kind of help in figuring out, how long they've been in their current living situation. Um, okay. Then question 6, during the past 12 months, how many months have you been in each of these situations? Um, This should not total up more than 12 months. So if a person was homeless for a total of 12 months, then they'd be considered chronically homeless. So again, you're gonna maybe want to help someone with organizing the time frame if needed. So kind of having that conversation, figuring it out. There are no safe havens in New Jersey. If someone happens to say they were staying in a safe haven, um, clarify if they were out of state because there aren't any currently in this state. Um, Okay, and then let's say for kind of also to help with answering this, you're calculating using months only. Um, let's say you got an answer to question 5, their current homeless situation is a starting point. Let's say they responded that they've been in their current situation for 2 months. Then you're kind of wanting to like add that up in the last 2 months. Okay, so you've been in this one location for 2 months. How about, before that? Kind of really until you equal up to those 12 months. So, last January. Okay, question 7. This is really important for how we determine chronic homeless status. So you're going to want to work backwards. So you're going to start at the most recent um, time, so their current situation, so that question number 5 response, and then work backwards for the last 12 months, if applicable, going back to up to 3 years, if they've had episodes of homelessness for that. Distinct episodes should be separated by at least 7 days in a non-homeless location. So let's say someone was, they were staying with a friend for 2 weeks. That is now a break in their home. That is now a break in their homelessness. So now it should be a separate episode of homelessness. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So this is kind of where it will look like on the survey itself. You'll see these, 5, 6, 7. In general, if you're staying in a non-homeless environment for longer than 7 days, that breaks the episodes of homelessness. If they are themselves, paying for a hotel motel, that would count, for longer than 7 days, that counts as a break in homelessness. They're staying with a friend or family, counts as a break in homelessness. Them staying in a shelter would not be a break in homelessness. If they were then in a hotel motel, not paid for by an agency or something like that, that would not, be considered a break in homelessness. And then if, like, let's say they're staying in the hospital waiting room, but they're not actually admitted, that wouldn't be a break. But if they are admitted to the hospital, that, that for more than 7 days, that is that break. You're gonna, in general with all of this, you're wanting to have a conversation with the client, but and pushing, as you can for some, some details for those episodes to figure out with chronic homelessness. Okay. So this I'm gonna just go through really briefly. This will be just there on the slides. So this is just what chronically homeless means. These are the definitions by HUD. And then, yeah. So yeah, you have these. Okay. Yeah, this is what, homeless with an individual disability, more definitions. Okay. So now back to more survey questions. Question number 8 is, where was your last permanent address before becoming homeless? Since it's not a mandatory question, if you don't get a response, you can leave it blank. It's no worries. Always, if you can at least get the state and the town, we can figure out the county and information from there. But if you can at least get folks, where that state and town was, very helpful for us. Okay, now this is on the rear side of the survey. If you have a paper survey, this is question, later questions. This is what a mandatory question. You're going to want to fill it out as much as possible. This is about who is sharing the same sleeping arrangement on this night of the 27th. So the question is asking, who was homeless with you on January 27th? You're going to want to fill it out as completely as possible. If a household member spent the night separately, do not include their information, such as, you're speaking with John. John has 2 kids, but the 2 kids were sleeping at grandma's house on the night of January 27th. You're not going to be counting the kids in for the survey purposes. So you just would answer, you would just have John fill out the survey. You wouldn't have anything for the 2 kids. If the respondent's unsure of any of the information, just tell them to give their best guess. If the respondent doesn't respond to when you ask the questions regarding age, gender, race, and ethnicity, you should provide your best guess for on the person you're surveying. And we're asking for initials just to help for the duplication process. So when you're asking, for someone's first initial, their, middle, or their first 2 letters of their last name, this is really just going to help us when we're going through all the surveys again and deduplicating. We know this information helps us with that. Okay. I think there's some more questions in the chat. Hold on. Okay. I'm trying to. So, someone asked, forming centers are assigned in Ocean County. These are considered colloquial locations. Yep, yeah, that would be correct. For Latoya, if you're a new shelter program, I would reach out to your point in time count coordinator. That is, since I'm the Monarch person who works in Pacific, that's Yannette Fredericks. reach out to her so you can figure out how to be part of this better, with the point in time count, just making sure with all of that. Valerie, you said, what if none of these apply to my client? If you want to just raise your hand so we can figure out what exactly you were speaking of for that. And then we can kind of fall back to that permanent address. Okay, so Susan, your question regarding permanent address, if it was their parents or a friend, essentially that person's not on a lease, is it still their permanent? Yeah, so essentially it's as long as it's a permanent housing location, even if it's not there, if they're staying with that person for a bit of time, even if they had a key to come and go, that would count as, being housed for that period of time. And that would be really what you're asking, regarding those episodes of homelessness. Can you define what's considered a household? Let me go back to that. Okay. So, households is considered anyone where who be staying together at any period of time. So it can be, let me go back to the slide. Hold on. So really, it's whoever would be with them that night. Obviously, when it came to if they were staying with another, there's for that one example, if they were staying with the kids were staying with the grandparent, then they're not considered the household that night. It's really just whoever would be with that household that night itself, like who's in the sleeping, they'd be like, staying together in one family. Okay. Okay, thanks, Valerie. And then we'll, be able to try to answer those. Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure I'm not missing questions. Okay. Okay, hold on. I see hand raised. Okay, Jamie, you should be able to ask your question.
Yeah, as far as household goes, if people who are only sharing a space because of circumstance, but they would not like normally they would not cohabitate, but it's like, like this was the only spot available, would they be considered separate households then? Does that make sense? Do you understand my
It
question?
does make sense. I'm just trying to remember how to answer it. Yeah.
I remember
So
last year
essentially,
for
whoever with you that night.
So, all right. I remember like in the past how it was defined to me, and I don't know if anything has changed, but it was like if you had a housing opportunity and you would invite them to join you, then that would be considered a household. But like if you've got two people that they both randomly showed up under the bridge together, that there's two separate households. Like, do you
Yeah,
understand
those
what
would be
I'm?
two separate. Yeah, yes,
Okay.
absolutely. They'd be two separate households. Essentially, yeah. It's if they want, if they're like, but they're for two people staying under the bridge and they want to be a household together, then yes, they would be, then you do it as a household. But if it's just like they happen to be near each other, then no, it would be two separate households. Okay. Okay. So for this is kind of the possible responses you might get when you're, asking relation for household. The person you are speaking with would be considered the head of the household. So since they're answering for themselves, then you want to ask every member of the household's relationship to the respondent should be provided. So maybe it's then their spouse, their parent, their child, their sibling, friend, etc. You're going to want to get the first initial, middle initial, and the first two letters of the last name as much as possible, just so we, are helping with deduplication. That is the only identifying information that we're really asking for. And again, it will be anonymous. It's really just to help us in duplication. Okay. Okay. So for this is then for age, you're going to be putting a numerical value. For gender, you're putting any of the following as the letter. So, W for woman, girl if child, but you would still put a W. Man, M for man, T for transgender, NB for non-binary, Q for questioning, and CSI for culturally specific identity. For race and ethnicity, write in what the person identifies as, and then this is the list for it. So AI is American Indian, Alaska Native, Indigenous. B is for Black or African American. PI, Pacific Islander. AS for Asian, Asian American. WH for White or Caucasian. MENA for Middle Eastern, North African, and H for Hispanic or Latino. Um, if a respondent gives no response, for household members to get you know, you want to try to get at least a um, age and gender as much as possible. Um, and you just always again want to thank people for sharing this information. This information also will have a little guide at the top of the survey for kind of how to fill in that, you know, those initials for that. So you're using the correct codes. Um, Okay, so back to more survey questions. This is along for the household characteristics. You're going to want to check whatever applies for each household member. So you're going to want to ask this question for each person in that household. If it is they, you know, blank questions are, you know, considered no response. If the response is no, you're going to want to put none apply. So if you ask, you know, for, you know, the person you're interviewing for themselves, you know, do they have any disabling conditions such as, you know, mental health, substance abuse, physical disability, developmental disability, so on. They said, you know, none for that. Same thing with they're not fleeing domestic violence or a veteran. You'd want to put none apply for that person. But then other members of their household might have some of these things apply. So you're going to want to ask these questions for these household characteristics for every member of the household. You're going to want to make this as conversational as possible. So, you know, the interviewing might go much more easily if you ask, you know, instead of asking, do you have any mental health concerns? You might say, hey, does anyone in the household, you know, have any depression or anxiety or any concerns like that? You know, to kind of answer that. Yeah. Okay. The survey just gets into more, you know, kind of what this, you know, means when it comes to, you know, if you're fleeing domestic violence or serving the armed forces. For active fleeing only, you're only going to check this box if they're actively fleeing when it comes to fleeing domestic violence. And then a veteran is considered as anyone who's worn a uniform, regardless of the discharge. They don't need to have the VA designation of a veteran. They just need to have at least served, you know, one day. Okay. And again, if none of these apply to any member of the household, you're going to want to make sure you check that box, none apply. Otherwise, if the household characteristics are left blank and that none apply is not selected, it will be viewed as a not like no response for that. Okay. And this is kind of what it might look like. You know, as an example for question 10, you know, you have uh, 6 members of the household. You've got their, you know, their initials and their, you know, first letters of their last name, how old they are, their gender, their race and ethnicity, and then any of these household characteristics that apply. So, you know, you can see that for all of them, they do have at least one thing filled out. So that person who's self, they have none apply. The spouse has you know, some things checked. Same thing with the parent, child, relative, so on. So they wouldn't, you know, everyone at least has kind of that one box checked in this section. Okay, so now this is kind of moving along on the survey. This is, you know, this is, you know, a mandatory question. This is kind of asking, you know, which of the following do you or anyone in your household receive of any income? Both there's non-cash benefits as well as, you know, sources of income. You're going to want to, you know, you can ask clarifying questions if you need it. So let's say you're interviewing someone who's, you know, a 35-year-old female who identifies that she has no children, when you were, you know, initially speaking earlier, but then when you get to this question 10, she says that she receives TANF. That wouldn't make sense since TANF is for families only, so then you'd want to go back and ask a little bit more clarification. And then if you actually know she did have children, then you can, you know, clarify, you can correct that information from earlier in the survey. You just overall want to make sure that when you're finished with the survey, that the household benefits section somewhat matches what the household composition is. Okay. Yeah, this is just all going over what, each of these programs mean. So these will be provided for you so you can get those information. Yeah, so what TANF is. And then one of the things to add, just since the survey is anonymous, if someone, let's say they are, you know, panhandling in some capacity, that would, be considered work or income and wages. So when they are talking about sources of income, um, you'd want to, have selecting that as a for income. Okay, yeah, this just goes over general assistance, social security. And then the question 11 is asking, what is the primary factor that contributed to or caused your current living situation? Okay, just check all that applies. The final question. You're going to want to read each option to the person you're surveying, since more than one obviously might be relevant to their current living situation. Um, and yeah, if it's not one of these that are listed and it's other, you check that and then write out whatever that might be. Okay, so then you've completed the survey. You're going to want to thank the respondent for their time, and tell them how appreciative you are, and let them know that we're working to removing the barriers and making it easier to gain assistance services. You want to check that, make sure that all the answers are complete and legible, and then you're going to turn in those paper surveys to your local PIT coordinator, um, and then they'll be working to submit that using SurveyMonkey if necessary. Yeah, just really want to make sure that you have all the answers, that the whatever you wrote is legible. And if you need guidance on anything, about submitting the data online, you're going to want to look at the data collection guide. Hold on, I see there's a couple questions in the Q&A. Okay, so someone asked, I want to be sure that I interpreting the expectations clearly. We only count our clients' participants. We plan to do outreach. My team is going to count the participants. They're working ready. Is this correct? So yeah, so if you're going to then also you're going to definitely count who your current clients, and participants are. But if you are doing outreach, then any folks that you would, speak with then would also be counted. Yeah, you definitely do that service and count it. Oh, sorry. Yeah, if you're not doing outreach, then yeah, you would just count who you actually can speak with to do the survey. And then someone had a question: if different families in an abandoned home, they are separate households, correct? Yes. So if they were not, if essentially if the family would like maybe they're people are staying together in like a physical location, but they wouldn't be staying together if they had, their own housing and their own choice, more choice in the matter, then they'd be separate households. Only if they want to be, one household. If they were in a permanent housing location, then they'd be counted as one. Otherwise, they do two separate households. Okay. Okay. So now moving along. Okay, so this is then entering the point in time data online. So on SurveyMonkey, the online, we're doing it through SurveyMonkey, and we have a YouTube video that can better explain it. It's on the website. It's a 10-minute video. So if you will be entering the paper surveys into SurveyMonkey, if you're, the person at your agency, or you're the, person that with the PIT coordinator needs that, check out the video. It's on the website. Okay, so this is just kind of some dates to keep in mind for the data collection itself. So for paper surveys, you're going to be asking about the night of January 27th into January 28th. You're going to confirm the data collection and time frame, within your county specifically. These paper surveys must be inputted into SurveyMonkey by 5 p.m. on February 2nd is when we need those surveys inputted online. For HIMIS, Monarch will be pulling HMIS data on Friday, January 30th for comparison and verification. So that needs to all be, inputted then. And then on the following Friday, February 6th, we'll be verifying the accuracy of the HMIS data for the night of the count by 5 p.m. For shelter summary shelter summary survey forms. Those need to be in by January 30th, no later than 5 p.m. So then we'll be doing the data polls and the other information. Okay. So if you're going to be inputting data online, you're going to click the link that was emailed to you for the survey. Be sure you are following the link for the live survey. There was a practice survey. You want to make sure it's the live survey. We're recommending that only one person from each agency enter the survey data, just so it reduces any data entry differences from person to person. If more than one person will be entering data, we suggest that you have conversations so that they agree upon uniform data entry. If a question was required, but the respondent did not respond or it was left blank, you're going to put that there was no response for it. If there was no response for question 3 of the survey, you're not inputting the survey online. Okay. This is the link to the YouTube. No, we're not trying to watch it. Sorry. This is the link to the YouTube video. This will be sent out, so definitely you can check that out. And then now we're going to talk about for agencies that are participating in the point in time count that use HMIS. So you should have received to submit the shelter summary form. This must be submitted by January 30th. Programs in HMIS and non-HMIS that are emergency shelter transitional housing have to complete this form. You're going to want to differentiate the program name from the HMIS name for all programs. You complete 1 box per program and then 1 box per HMIS project. Again, it needs to be in by Friday, January 30th. This helps us for accounting for errors. And yeah, so if you are using HMIS, please make sure this is filled out. Okay, so this is kind of, again, a little bit of a repeat. The count will be taking place from January 27th through February 4th, asking where someone was staying on the night of January 27th. Monarch will be pulling the data on January 30th. We need to have the shelter summary forms by 5 p.m. on the 30th. We'll be verifying and finalizing the HMIS data on February 6th. Okay, so if you need to be updating HMIS, if you are an agency in HMIS, you want to ensure that you have accurate information that's entered for all program participants for January 27th through February 4th. You want to make sure that both individual and household level information is accurate. You're updating that household income to reflect current information. You're not changing the client admission information. You're just conducting an update for what is their income on the night of January 27th. If you're experiencing any difficulties, contact your HMIS provider. I can see a couple more questions in the chat. Yes, the PowerPoint will be sent after the meeting, and it's also being recorded, so yeah, if you need to watch it again. Okay, so again, reminder of some important dates. This should have already all been done. The confirming HMIS programs for the PIT was supposed to be done on Friday, January 16th. So if you have not done that, please do that immediately. The shelter summary forms due January 30th. We'll be doing the initial data pull on the 30th as well. We'll have until February 6th for data cleanup, with the final data pull being done on February 6th. If there's a bunch of different training resources from HMFA for HMIS. If you have any questions or unsure how to update or correct information, check out those resources. You also can contact New Jersey HMIS for more assistance. Overall, if you have any questions regarding what's going to be happening in your community specifically when it comes to the point in time count, contact your local point in time coordinator. If you're not sure who that is, and you need some getting directed to that, please reach out then to Monarch at NewJerseyCounts@monarchhousing.org so we can connect you to your local point in time count coordinator. But thank you all for your time. I'm going to go back through the questions, and if anyone has any other questions that were not answered, please raise your hand or put it in the Q&A, and I will try to get through all of them. And if I don't answer it, keep kind of going. So let me just, oh, Susan, I see your hand raised. Should be able to talk.
Yeah, hi, Catherine. Thanks for this. It's been really helpful. Gave me some good reminders. Uh, a question. Um, I, I apologize. You do not have a list of HIMSS programs from me. I'm sure that there was an email sent that I missed, and I apologize. But here's my question. Um, of course, I would expect that the Monarch folks would be looking at anything, a HIMSS use that was labeled emergency shelter or transitional housing. I actually have a couple of programs that, because of the way they're set up, they're in HIMSS as supported services, even though they are sheltering. Give you an example, our motel program, because there are not specific rooms that sit open for this program, we add them, take them away, rather than having beds noted the way there would be in an emergency shelter. When I provide this list to Monarch of the HIMSS programs, am I able to include the actual names of the programs that I want to have included in the report from you? Is that going to work? Because that'll save. I mean, that'll make me look like a hero with a couple of the agencies that I've already told them, hey, guess what, guys, you're going to get stuck feeding the monkey. And if I come back to them now and say, guess what? Just make sure HIMSS is okay. No feeding the monkey. They have to be happy, happy, happy.
Okay, so just because I feel like there's like a couple points that, so I guess with I don't want to answer your question incorrect, Susan. So if you can send that question over to New Jersey Counts at Monarch Housing, that email, just because I don't want to, I feel like that is a couple different things, and I don't want to answer wrong and confuse things and kind of get it to be more, more of a problem. So I just want, yeah. So I would just send an email over to them so then someone can directly assist you. 'Cause I think that might be also some bit of coordination with like your county specifically, like, how you're doing the count, kind of just stuff like that.
That's perfect. That's great. I can take care of that. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Okay, okay, just going through the rest of the Q&A. Can we count people in recovery homes? Yes. So if someone's staying in, hold on, let me go back to the survey with that, Nicole, for your question. Okay, so Nicole, I'm not sure if you're still on, but when your question, can we count people in recovery homes? It will kind of depend on like what exactly like a recovery kind of where that falls in. So if it's, let's say it's, permanent housing of some sort, that like maybe it's a like like a sober living house, something like that, but it's like they're paying for it or they have like a voucher or something like that where it's like a permanent location for them, then they would be, you'd put, permanent housing for that answer. If it's more of like an institution of some sort, so it's like a more of a treatment facility, then you'd want to check off that under institution, substance abuse treatment facility for that. Okay. Scrolling through. Okay, someone had talk about the episode section, please. So let me go back to that. If you're still on Kiko Lomo, if you want to raise your hand so I can just kind of know what exactly you had maybe some questions on with the episode section. But overall, the episodes, so it's separate time. So each episode, anytime there's a break in homelessness, more than 7 days, that is considered then a new episode of homelessness. So, let's say someone in the last 3 years, Rovina, should be able to. Okay, Ravina, you should be able to ask your question. Okay. Um, Ravina, you should be able to come off mute, but if you don't still have a
Okay,
question.
can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can.
Okay. The survey, not the survey question, but the survey form for home or it's past this screen here. It's going towards the end. And you have a survey form for housing or something. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Was it like resources?
I can't remember because I'm trying to do a couple of things at one time,
Okay.
at one time. It was a form that we submit, if I'm not
Oh, yes,
mistaken.
yes. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's where is it? The sheltered summary form.
Yes, the shelter summary form. Now, um, we don't do shelters, but would that considered, would permanent housing be considered for this?
Yes. So if you are, yeah, if you are an emergency shelter, transitional housing, rapid rehousing, or a permanent housing program, you're going to want to fill
Okay.
out the sheltered summary form.
Okay. Would that be also include our senior housing or scattered sites?
If it is a like if it's a COC funded like
Yes.
housing, yes. If it's more just like a general like, affordable housing like senior
Mm-hmm.
project, no. But if it's a COC one,
See,
yes.
okay, okay. Thank you.
Mhm. No problem. Okay. Okay. So but back to where to go? Did I lose the question? But yeah, so back to oh, Dawn. See your hand raised.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So I had put the question in the chat as well, but since you were just talking about it, if we fill out that shelter summary form with our rapid and permanent clients, do we have to do a separate survey with each of those individuals as well, or is that all
No.
covered in the form?
Yeah, no, you wouldn't. If then because then their information's in HIMAS, you just want to make sure it's like updated. So like if check that they're like, their income, things like that. But yeah, you would not need to do a paper survey with them.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, great. Thank you, Limo. I'm glad your question was answered. Okay. Someone asked then what time on the 127 does the count start? And it's just asking where someone's staying that night. So we're gonna be doing surveys through from the 28th through February 4th. If you're talking with people then. But it's really just whatever folks were saying on that night of the 27th. Uh, Jared, I see your hand.
Yeah, you said we would know sometime on Monday or by Monday
Yes.
if it's getting pushed back.
Yeah, if it's getting pushed back, and then we'll send out more of like kind of all the dates and that kind of shift accordingly, with that if it gets
And
pushed back.
I would imagine it'd be pushed back to the week of the second, probably.
Yeah, it would be the following week. So it'd be
Okay.
when we do the count asking where someone stayed February 3rd, and then we do the counts and stuff on the 4th.
And that'll all be sent to us.
Yes, yeah, if it ends up happening, yeah, that will all be widely distributed and all of
All
that.
right. Outstanding. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Okay. Let's see. So can you go back to updating him a screen? Okay, yeah. Um, Let me just make sure I'm getting to that. Esther, this is the screen you wanted, right? Hopefully it is. Okay. If you have questions regarding the presentation, yeah, if you have any questions, you're gonna then want to go contact the New Jersey counts at Monarch Housing. We'll be able to then get you answers to that. Then Paul, your question. Yeah, we're not asking any questions regarding anyone's legal status. If someone feels comfortable, if if they're experiencing homelessness and they feel comfortable answering the survey, um, fill it out from there. But yeah, we're not asking any questions regarding anyone's, legal status. And we obviously understand that people might be hesitant then to answer any questions if, if they are, they do have, concern about their legal status. When are surveys due for transitional DV shelters? All surveys, everything, would be, where is it? The dates are all running in my mind. Yeah, so if you're doing for the paper survey, anyone who's doing a paper survey, it must be in by into SurveyMonkey by Monday, February 2nd. So if you're doing paper surveys and then you're gonna be giving that information, they just need to be into by Monday, February 2nd. And then back to Paul's follow-up question, they might be homeless because of that. Yeah, so Paul, if they are homeless because of that, it can be when we're asking on the survey, where is it? What is it? Yeah, this one, what was the primary factor that contributed to your current living situation? Absolutely, that can be you can put other if they feel comfortable answering that. If also was, loss of job, or, loss of a job because of, legal stuff, kind of checking all that apply. But absolutely, if that's their reasoning for why their homelessness started, yeah, put that in other. Okay. Just want to be sure that I'm interpreting the expectations clearly only. Okay, yes, that was answered. If Marin's still on, I'm sorry, I missed your question earlier at like the beginning of it. Is that either one or two or both one and two? Is that regarding if you're still on, Marin, if you want to raise your hand so I can try to answer that. Susan's question, people should be aware that people may believe that they were administered a survey and they are in a shelter. Yeah, so yeah, I would always say anytime you're talking with anybody, if you want to always ask that question, have you filled out a survey? If they have not actually been asked the questions on the survey, so you can kind of ask them, like, hey, here's the first question. Were you asked this already? If they say no, then, ask them if they would mind, kind of answering the questions. Just because, yeah, that they might think the shelter is using HIMSS, but they might not be. So anytime you speak with anyone, I just want to, ask them those questions, try to get as much information. Since we do go through and do the deduplication, that's where the initials come in are helpful. So yeah, definitely try to get surveys. Okay. What is an example of other when it comes to problems getting help? Susan, I'm not sure what exactly you mean by that question. So if you're still on, Susan Fletcher, and want to raise your hand, so I can try to clarify that for you. Then Susan Nottingham for race, ethnicity, we're doing the full range. And then, yeah, so it's asking, yeah, we're still asking the questions that how we have it, how it might then be translated for HUD, and HIMSS, that's different with the idea of, sex versus gender. But yeah, the survey itself shows kind of all the different categories for race and ethnicity, and the same thing with gender. So use that as a guide for how to respond. Okay. And is there a brief YouTube for filling in the summary blocks for programs? For the shelter summary forms, no, there's not. There was training on that. So if you go to Monarch's website and like look at some of the videos, I'm not sure which training specifically, probably the HMIS training would cover that a bit more. But yeah, I think I've answered then all of the questions in the Q&A. Not sure if anyone else has any other questions that are on. If not, thank you all so much for your time and have a great day.